seed in the East for all intents and purposes. I don't see that changing. So for me, the most valuable player has to be Giannis because statistically he's fantastic. He's averaging a double-double on the year, and his team, a team that little small market team out of Milwaukee, is in control of the NBA. How is he not the most valuable?
Yeah, I think this is a very interesting question because on the surface, I do look at Giannis and what he's done this year and how he's pulled the Bucks into the team to beat in the East, it feels like. But when you look at Harden and the fact that he's averaging almost 9 points a game more than Giannis, that's where I do start to go, okay, what does that mean, though? Because that's an incredible number to me to look at. When you look at the scoring leaders in the league and you look at a guy like Harden that's 9 points ahead of the next guy that's really fighting for him in the MVP. And even if you throw Paul George or Joel Embiid in the mix, it's still 8 or 9 points is the gap. That's the part to me that I feel like pulls Harden back in because I don't feel like we've ever seen that, Eric, where you see a guy that far ahead this late in the season where he's played just as many games as Giannis has, and he's scoring that many points. It just goes to show me that what he had to do in the middle of this year to drag this Rockets team into the position they did puts him right there. Even the fact of Giannis is having an out-of-this-world type of season, Harden is right there with him, which I think is pretty incredible this late in the year, that you've got two guys with sort of a different array of stats where Giannis has the more well-rounded game and certainly the more efficient game where he's kind of dominating the game. We talked about control of the game with Zion. Giannis is a guy that can do that, where he can really control the game with his scoring, his rebounding, his ability to play D, get other guys involved, where Harden is more of just the offensive threat. He like you said, on the defensive side, he's not going to give you much. But every night on the offensive side, to go out and score an average of over 36 a game is pretty impressive with what he's able to do. And basically over half his shots, 53% of his shots are coming from the 3-point line. So he fully embodies the way that the game is changing. But when you look at that, how do you factor that in, him scoring that much more than Giannis, but then Giannis being so much more of an efficient player?
I do think that is a valid point. I mean, 36 points per game. It's actually 36.4, 36 and change average per game. I can remember, even in the past with guys like Michael Jordan, when you were talking about guys trying to win the scoring title, it seemed to be that if you could score 30 to 31 points per game in a season on average, you were right in that mix of first, second place for the scoring title. Now you're looking at a guy in James Harden who is at 36 and change, and that's an average points per game. So I agree with you. I think that is a stat line that is very similar to what we talked about with Russell Westbrook, where the triple-double stats come into play. And it's like it's so far and above the norm that you have to give him credit for that. And so I do give James Harden a lot of credit for that, especially because he shoots 44% from the field, which is not great, but it's certainly not terrible. It's not bad. So you're not looking at a guy who's taken 80 shots in order to score, 45 points. To me, that would be just would throw everything away if that happened. But he's not doing that. He is very effective on the offensive side of the court. I think for me, the reason that I'm not as excited about that, though, is the same reason I gave Russell Westbrook such a hard time 2.5 years ago. And that's because, yes, he is doing something from a scoring perspective that has never been done in this fashion, but it doesn't equate to more wins for the Rockets than it does for the Bucks. The Bucks have 8 more wins than the Rockets. So, yeah, he scores 9 more points a game on average than Giannis, but that doesn't equate to 9 more wins for the team. That's where I get a little bit lost in that. So I see the point that you're making, but I also want to look at it from an overall value standpoint, since this is the most valuable player. Harden is definitely valuable to the Rockets because there's no way they would even win 47 games without what Harden does. But the Bucks are 55 wins. And so is the value of Giannis overall more to that team than just 36 points a game?
It'll be what voters look at and what they if they truly look through the stats and they've watched the games and what they see. because if they're just going to look at it from a statistical standpoint, it'll be a close race because of Harden's offensive numbers. But if they take everything into account, and they are looking at the fact of Harden's getting 7 more shots off a game than Giannis. Giannis is shooting it almost over 58% from the floor. Harden's about 44 and change percent from the floor. So Giannis is doing a lot more with a lot less shots. So if you gave him 7 or 8 more shots a game, he's probably going to make 4 or 5 of those. Right there, he catches them in points. And then he's crushing him in terms of rebounds. And like I said, from the defensive side, it's not even a question. Giannis is a guy that plays pretty good defense and a guy that can really control the paint and inside, not afraid to block shots, is aggressive on the defensive side, plays with a high motor. And Harden, he's got to go a little bit of the LeBron route we talked, where on the defensive side, they really don't ask much of him. It's all about the offensive side for him. And you see the stretch where, if you're going to score 30 points or more in 32 straight games, you've got to be resting at some point. And it's just going to be the defensive side with Harden. And at times he'll give you a little bit of an effort in a close, tight game. But most of the time it's going to be a lot of show and Olay type defense.
Well, I saw how you threw my man LeBron under the bus right there. I noticed that. But I'll say this, same thing for LeBron a couple years back. If you gave him the amount of shots that some of these guys like Westbrook were taking, he'd score 50 a game too.
I thought LeBron was always made the smart play, though.
Exactly. That's my point. If he took the amount of shots that some of these other quote-unquote great shooters take, he would score that many points. And I was proving your point about Giannis. If he takes the amount of shots that Harden takes, he scores 36 points a game, just like Harden does. So, that's where that kind of muddies the water a little bit. Who would you give it to?
I'd probably lean now towards Giannis. It's very close for me when I look at it. And even the fact of a guy like the numbers that Embiid and Paul George have put up this year are MVP numbers in really any other year with what they've been able to do. Now, Embiid's missed 8 or 9 games more than most of these guys that we're talking about. So I think that sort of takes him out of the mix if he's, 8 to 10 games in the rears of what they've done. But the numbers, Paul George over 28 points a game and filling it up in the rebounds and assist side. But it just goes to show you how good these other guys have been. So Harden won it last year. You see what Giannis has done. I feel like there's this push from the league side that it's kind of Giannis's time, that they want him to step forward. And again, it's not a secret. We know where LeBron is in his career, but you've got to have a way to draw viewers in. And Giannis is kind of that next guy. He's called the Greek Freak for a reason. The NBA is desperate to get a team into that sort of 7 p.m., 8 p.m. time slot to really draw people in. And I think getting Giannis out there, hoping the Bucks make a deep run, hoping they can showcase him in a lot of games this playoff run that the Bucks are going to be involved in. I think if you make him the MVP and that, it sort of solves some problems for the league at that point. So I feel like Giannis is going to be the guy because he fits several bills for what the voters in the league really want.
So I got to ask you this, and I was going to ask you in the previous segment when we were talking about Duke, but I thought it would fit better here, so I waited. The idea about Zion and which team is going to take him, depending on how the lottery works out, I think he's probably the number 1 pick at this point. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, yeah. I think the only way he's not the number 1 pick is maybe like a Phoenix that is desperate in need of a point guard. But I think everybody else, it's Zion hands down.
Yeah, so let's say Zion is the number 1 pick, and that's likely going to mean he goes to Phoenix, Dallas, obviously the Knicks, Cleveland, somewhere, one of those teams potentially. But bottom line, Zion could go to a smaller market team. Now, here's my fear. Giannis, I don't see him on a lot of NBA marketing material. I see Westbrook. I see, of course, LeBron. I see Durant. I see Curry. I see Harden. I see guys, not even Anthony Davis that much. I see guys who are headliners, and they're not Giannis. And so I think that works against him because he plays for the Bucks. And so I agree with you that the NBA would love to crown him as their next, but we've talked about this, long ago. He's got a name that's hard to say. And so he goes by the Greek Freak or Giannis. I think that's marketable, but I don't think it's as marketable as Westbrook or Harden or Curry or LeBron. And so I think that works against him. So Justin, I was going to ask you this in the previous segment. Does it matter where Zion goes, where he gets drafted, because is there a risk that he struggles to become a household name after the draft if he gets stuck in Phoenix or if he gets stuck in Cleveland or wherever? Because, again, Cleveland's not Cleveland without LeBron. So what if he's in Dallas? What if he's in one of those markets that people just aren't going to really follow Zion? Is he going to struggle with the same thing that a guy like Giannis or Anthony Davis are struggling with based on the markets that they go to?
No, I don't think he will. I think he's just got the name right now. He's got the one name. He's very recognizable by everyone. I can't imagine Nike's going to let him get away, and they're going to put all that marketing effort behind them. Really, a lot of the guys that you named, you look at sort of what has made them famous. A lot of times it's the shoe companies that have done it. And more times than not, it's Nike. Their marketing machine gets behind guys and they just have them all over the place. Giannis has a signature shoe that's coming. So when Nike really puts that backing behind him and does something creative with him, I think that's where you'll see him rise. But I think in the NBA, LeBron made a name for Cleveland. That's a small market team. Russ has done the same thing in OKC. So it's there if they continue to play well and they're doing things that are deserving of highlights every night. Now, if he goes somewhere and doesn't do anything and he's scoring 10 points a game and he's only getting one highlight dunk, then no, he'll be forgotten. But if he's putting up numbers and he's making 2, 3, 4 highlight type plays, blocks, dumps, blocks or dunks or hustle plays, and he's all over Twitter and these quick highlights that you can now see that the NBA is showing and ESPN. Like, you don't have to wait for SportsCenter anymore. If Zion gets an insane dunk at Duke, it's on Twitter within 10 seconds that you're seeing this stuff. And that just brings more. So I actually think he's got a chance to be even a bigger star no matter where he goes, just because he's going to have really the peak of the social media movement, where anything that he does in any city, no matter if it's a primetime game or not, you're going to be able to see instantaneously. And I think that's just going to draw more eyeballs to him. His jersey sales are going to go through the roof. Everybody's going to want a Zion Williamson jersey no matter where he goes. He's going to be the next star that the kids are going to want a jersey to. And if his play backs it up, Eric, I think he can be a superstar no matter which team gets him.
Well, that's an excellent take. And I'm interested to see if that happens. I actually would like to see him go to the Knicks, because I just think that team has a lot of rich history.
So would the NBA.
Yeah, right. The NBA would too. It's going to be another frozen envelope. So I think that team has a rich enough history in the NBA that, boy, would they love to see him go there. I guess Patrick Ewing, that whole saga will be all up in the memory banks if he ends up getting picked to go to the Knicks. But thinking of another small market situation, here we have in Major League Baseball, and by the way, my MVP would be Giannis. That would be my pick as well. But thinking about Major League Baseball for a minute, because it kind of tags on to what you just said there. You made a lot of good points about household names, even in small markets. But here we have in the Major League Baseball arena, Manny Machado, we know, has gone to the Padres for $300 and some million, 330 or something like that. Bryce Harper then goes to Philadelphia, which is a bigger market in baseball than the Padres for sure. Now, Mike Trout, that situation has been solved, but he stays with the Angels for a record $400+ million. And again, he'll be playing for the Angels, like you said, until he's in a nursing home. So again, another situation in baseball where I think it's an absolutely ridiculous contract. He literally is signed through his 39th birthday. He'll play till he's almost, no, he won't play that long. Let's just get that straight right now. But he will be signed with the Angels. Yes, that's right. The Angels until he's nearly 40 years old. But I got on Twitter and I asked all of our listeners through my Twitter account, how many rings did Cano bring to the Mariners? And how many rings did Hamilton bring to the Rangers? How many rings did Pujols bring to those same Angels? I think I have about as many World Series rings on my hand as all of those guys have on theirs, based on the large, massive contracts that they had. So again, we talked about it. I don't like the way that baseball handles their contracts. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. It doesn't translate to dynasty. It doesn't translate to marketability. I think Machado going to the Padres is basically meaningless because I don't think his Padres jersey is going to be a top seller for this coming year. I mean,